It was the day before Thanksgiving, November 24th, 1971. A man in his mid-40s, dressed in a dark suit, white shirt, skinny black tie, and sunglasses, walked up to the counter at Portland International Airport. He paid cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. He then boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305, a short 30-minute flight with 36 passengers on a Boeing 727. Everything seemed normal until the plane was in the air. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant. At first, she assumed it was just another man hitting on her. She tucked the note into her pocket without reading it. He leaned toward her and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Cooper then revealed what looked like a beam inside his briefcase, several cylinders with wires wrapped in tape, and a large battery. Calmly, he instructed the flight attendant to deliver his demands to the cockpit: $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, and 2 complete sets of sport parachutes, each with a main and reserve. He added a chilling condition. The plane would not land in Seattle until everything was ready, or he would detonate While the FBI and local authorities scrambled to gather the cash and parachutes, the plane circled Seattle for over 2 hours. Inside the cabin, passengers were told it was just a technical delay. Cooper, meanwhile, was the picture of composure, wearing dark sunglasses, sipping bourbon, which he paid for with a tip, and even telling the crew to make sure the pilots got a hot meal after landing. When the plane finally landed in Seattle, Cooper demanded it be refueled and ordered the cabin lights turned off so that FBI snipers around the runway couldn't see inside. Once the $200,000 in cash and the parachutes were delivered, he released all 36 passengers and 2 flight attendants, keeping only the pilots, a flight engineer, and 1 stewardess on board. Then came new instructions. Fly southeast toward Mexico City, but at a dangerously low speed of just 185 kilometers per hour, 115 miles per hour, and at an altitude of only 3,000 meters, 10,000 feet. The landing gear had to stay down and the flaps lowered 15 degrees. The crew warned that with these settings they'd never reach Mexico, so Cooper agreed to refuel in Reno, Nevada. At 7:40 p.m., the Boeing 727 took off again. Soon after, Cooper ordered the crew into the cockpit, leaving him alone in the cabin. The stewardess's last glimpse was of him fastening something around his waist. Around 8 p.m., warning lights signaled that the rear air stair door had been opened mid-flight. When asked if he needed help, Cooper barked back a firm no. Moments later, the jet plunged into a violent storm. The plane suddenly pitched upward, likely the moment Cooper jumped into the dark, freezing night, vanishing into history. After the hijacking, the FBI launched what would become one of the longest investigations in U.S. history. Agents scoured the Boeing 727 for evidence. They collected more than 60 unidentified fingerprints, none of which matched passengers, crew, or anyone in FBI records. The ransom note Cooper had handed to the stewardess was gone. He had taken it back. His bourbon glass and cigarette butts also vanished from the case files under mysterious circumstances. Left behind, however, were the unused parachutes, one of which had its straps cut, likely so Cooper could secure the bag of money. The most important clue was a black clip-on tie with a pearl pin abandoned on his seat. Decades later, forensic testing revealed particles of titanium, cerium, and strontium sulfide embedded in the fabric. These rare industrial traces suggested Cooper may have worked as an engineer or manager in aerospace or chemical manufacturing. Some even speculated he could have been connected to Boeing itself, since those elements were used in the company's experimental supersonic jet program during the 1960s. While investigators analyzed the plane, search teams fanned out across the rugged forests and river valleys between Portland and Seattle. an area of dense mountains near the Columbia and Lewis rivers, about 50 kilometers from Portland. Ironically, this meant that if Cooper survived the jump, he had landed not far from where the hijacking began. But the search was plagued by problems: the vast terrain, poor weather, and the fact that the jump happened just before Thanksgiving weekend, when many FBI agents were already away from duty. By the time the plane landed in Reno, Cooper had nearly a 2-hour head start. Despite combing the region for weeks, nothing was found. The FBI circulated the serial numbers of the $20 bills to banks, casinos, and racetracks across the country, hoping the money would resurface. But not a single bill turned up. Then, in 1978, a strange clue appeared. A deer hunter discovered an instruction placard for operating the Boeing 727's rear air stairs, lying near a forest road directly under the flight path of Cooper's plane. It was the first physical sign that he may have really jumped in that area. In 1980, nearly a decade after the hijacking, a remarkable discovery revived the mystery. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was vacationing with his family along the Columbia River, right in Cooper's possible landing zone. While digging in the sand to build a campfire, he unearthed 3 rotting packets of $20 bills. The serial numbers confirmed they were part of the $200,000 ransom. Even more striking, the bundles were still in the same order in which they had been wrapped by the bank. Investigators believed the packets had either slipped from Cooper's bag during the jump or been buried by the river currents. Yet, despite an exhaustive search of the shoreline, the FBI found no other trace of the money or of Cooper himself. Could Cooper have survived the jump? From the start, investigators believed he might have been a military veteran or trained paratrooper. He leapt into the stormy night at low altitude, precisely when the Air Force jets tailing the Boeing 727 couldn't track him. Witnesses also recalled how confidently he identified landmarks on the ground, suggesting he knew the region well. Experienced veterans of World War II and Vietnam later confirmed that such a jump, while extremely dangerous, was far from impossible. With the right preparation and skydiving practice, Cooper could have slipped through the storm, landed safely in the forests near the Columbia River, and vanished without a trace. Yet, the deeper the FBI investigated, the more they questioned whether Cooper could have actually survived. He jumped into freezing rain, zero visibility, and high winds, wearing only a light business suit and moccasins. If he landed in icy rivers or on a snow-covered ridge, his chances would have been slim. Strangely, he hadn't even requested basic gear like a helmet or proper boots. Even more puzzling of the parachutes provided, Cooper selected the oldest, least reliable model as his main chute, and for his reserve, he mistakenly took a non-functional training parachute, which had been sewn shut for demonstrations. Such chutes carried clear markings that any skilled paratrooper would recognize. To investigators, this suggested Cooper might not have been the expert skydiver they first imagined. For nearly a decade, the FBI, along with the police and the military, combed the area for a possible landing. They even went down on submarines to the bottom of the nearest rivers and lakes. They found several human remains, established the identities of all the dead. None of them turned out to be the same kidnapper. The investigators did not even find a parachute, a suitcase with a bomb, or any other trace. But who was Dan Cooper? For half a century, newspapers have asked the same question, and no one has the answer. Investigators quickly learned that the name was fake. In fact, the famous alias D.B. Cooper was born by accident. The FBI briefly questioned a petty criminal with that name, and although he was cleared almost immediately, a local journalist reported it as fact. The story spread nationwide, and the hijacker was immortalized under the wrong name. Among the many suspects, the FBI's best candidate was Richard McCoy, a Vietnam veteran who hijacked another Boeing 727 in 1972, just 5 months after Cooper's stunt. His method was nearly identical. He demanded ransom, this time $500,000, and parachuted out of the plane. But unlike Cooper, McCoy was caught within 2 days. He was younger, less composed, and witnesses described him as nothing like the calm, polite man in sunglasses. Worse for the theory, McCoy had a solid alibi on November 24th, 1971. He was in Las Vegas, 1,500 kilometers away. He was sentenced to 45 years, later escaped, and died in a police shootout. Over time, the suspect list narrowed from more than 1,000 to just 10 names. The FBI filled 60 volumes of case files, but never found proof strong enough to charge anyone. Finally, in July 2016, the Bureau officially closed the active investigation, shifting resources to other cases. Still, they left the door open. If new evidence emerges, the mystery of D.B. Cooper could one day be solved. Cooper's daring stunt left a permanent mark on both aviation and pop culture. In the year following the hijacking, there were 15 copycat attempts, forcing U.S. airports to tighten security. By 1973, luggage inspections and passenger searches became mandatory, and cockpits were redesigned with viewing windows so crews could monitor the cabin. Boeing even added a mechanical device to prevent the rear air stair from being opened mid-flight. Engineers nicknamed it the Cooper Vein. Beyond aviation, Cooper became a folk legend. His story inspired films, books, documentaries, and countless references in music and television. The 1981 film, The Pursuit of D.B. Cooper, dramatized his escape, while decades later, Twin Peaks paid homage by naming FBI agent Dale Bartholomew Cooper after him. Most recently, Marvel's Loki series, 2021, cheekily suggested that the hijacker was none other than the trickster god himself. 50 years on, the mystery remains unsolved, but the legend of D.B. Cooper has become immortal. 50 years later, D.B. Cooper remains America's only unsolved skyjacking case. No body, no parachute, almost no money. Just a tie, a stormy night, and a legend that refuses to die. Who was he? A genius veteran, a lucky amateur, or a ghost? We may never know.